Goku vs Smash Bros is one of my favorite videos that I've ever done on the channel. It was very in-depth and it covered a whole bunch of IPs. And I've always wanted to sort of make a sequel to that video. So what other way to do that than by utilizing PlayStation's attempt at replicating Smash Bros. And while yes, these characters at first glance aren't nearly as collectively iconic as what makes up the Smash Bros roster, there's still a lot of these characters, a lot of IPs, and a lot of things that I have to scale. Which to me is the main draw of these videos to begin with. And yeah, this project is as long as it is. I don't want to drag the intro, so before we dive right into it, I'd like to implore you guys to subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers. We just hit 50k a couple weeks ago, and I think we can really hit it. We're gonna do a lot of things on the channel this year, and if you supported me last year, thank you. And if you're new here, don't be a stranger. It's for free after all. But with that being said, let's get right onto the video. Firstly, we've got a character known as Fat Princess. And be for real, do you think that Fat Princess is going to be able to beat Goku? Well, if you thought no, you'd be absolutely correct. She comes from a game where the protagonist's best feat is destroying boulders and dodging arrow fire, so yeah, Goku, who as a kid literally sold the entirety of the Red Ribbon Army for fun, definitely got this in the bag. Next, here we have a character known as Spike from Ape Escape. For those of you guys who don't know, it's a pretty chill IP from PlayStation. Get used to not knowing these characters because, as it seems, Sony really scrapped at the bottom of the barrel to make a competent roster for their Smash Bros. Clone. So with that out of the way, what is our boy Spike's skill? Well, surprisingly high as a matter of fact, as Spike's AP comes from the fact that he physically scales to Dr. Tomoki, who survived the self-destruction of the Saru 003. If one were to pixel calc this blast at a low end and just using a more conservative angle, it would yield continental results, but that's not taking into account that one, there's a much larger and bigger angle of this blast here, and two, in lore, the space station can destroy entire planets physically and withstand the blowback of doing so. So surviving a blast capable of destroying a spacecraft that could, endure that would yield planetary durability more than likely. And that would just bump up, Spike's AP as such. So not gonna lie, bro is a Kid Goku victim. What can I say? Dragon Ball gets really busted really quick. You have Roshi's Moon Bust, which alone has large planetary calcs. So if OG Dragon Ball characters can output energy relative to what would be required to destroy gas giants, could you imagine what an MUI Goku is capable of? Next, Sly Cooper is the first semi-recognizable character in his lineup, but unfortunately he's also one of the weakest, with his scaling roughly being anywhere between large building to town level, as he scales the characters who are just massive gigantic figures, and Sly can beat characters who can withstand multiple shots from a gun whose bullets can output large building levels of destruction. But at best, Sly Cooper caps it around town level, as he defeated the Panda King, who is said to be so powerful that he can bury entire villages in snow. As for his speed, he seems to be a casual lightning timer. He's dodged the stuff himself, and he scales the characters who can just, produce that by just running. So this guy would be a pretty cool matchup for someone like Puss in Boots. But Goku, I'm gonna just put it like this. It's not really a good sign when your best high-end scaling can be replicated by the finger of a character that he defeated in the first arc of the main series. And as for lightning, Goku's been outpacing stuff since he was a kid. So next, I was gonna do a cutaway joke about how PaRappa would just get one-shotted, but he surprisingly has some interesting stuff. No, he doesn't beat Goku, don't get it twisted, but I still want to talk about some of his abilities, because he's shown that his durability is so good that he can survive falling from orbit. He can also endure blows from characters who can toss guitars around space and have them come back to Earth in quick succession, with the kinetic energy of these, throws getting into the city level ranges. But at best, PaRappa can grow to sizes that can dwarf entire planets, and he can also endure meteors that are shown to be relative to his head size. So at best, PaRappa should have large planetary AP, which should be a metric that should stem from the kinetic energy of his movements, seeing as how he's the size of celestial bodies and he's still moving and whining around like a cartoon character. So he would yield crazy amounts of energy due to his size alone, as well as the speed of his movements. So pretty much we have our first character who was actually strong enough for me to bring up the fact that King King Vegeta with the wave of his hand can output dwarf star levels of destruction and tank it as well. And that's a guy that first form Frieza one-shotted, and even a pre-SSJ1 Vegeta could press that guy. So next, oh, now we have Sir Daniels. This guy is the main character to a 3D platformer known as Medieval. It's a pretty old Unk status gem, and hey, it even received a remake in 2019. And look at this, it looks pretty crisp. So with that context out of the way, we can move on to his skilling. Yeah, he's a jobber. Next, Joel and Ellie are the main protagonists of The Last of Us 1 and 2 respectively. So basically, okay, I see where this is going. I need to find someone who's not jobber, or we're just gonna have Goku, soloing everyone. Let me look through the lineup of this game. I know I'm gonna talk about everyone, but, I just want to change the pacing for a bit. Oh, no way, Dante from Devil May Cry is here. This guy should definitely be enough to beat Goku. Let's see. Uh-oh. I thought it was Dante from the mainline series. It's actually Dante from the failed DMC reboot. I mean, don't worry. It's Dante after all. You can't be that weak. Let's see here. Apparently he defeated Virgil, who summoned a thunderstorm. Okay. And his best speed feat is reacting to Virgil, who can move faster than lightning. Anyways, let's get this fraud father Dante out of here. Next, Isaac Clarke is the protagonist of the Dead Space series, and he has weapons that can destroy large rock formations. And he can also tank these weapons point blank, granting him building plus AP and durability. And as for his speed, yeah, honestly, I'm surprised you guys let me talk for that long. Next, and here we have Raiden from Metal Gear Rising, and hey man, I don't think I've ever seen a more appropriate time to use that term. Kind of just walked into himself. It's Raiden from Metal Gear Solid. He's not weak, but I mean, this is Goku once again. Next, here we have one of the former mascots of PlayStation being Toro. Okay guys, we need to relax now. But it's not wrong, so next. Here we have Nariko from a series known as Heavenly Blade. She has a big sword and... Okay guys, we're really stretching it now. Next, here we have Cat and Dusty from a game called Gravity Rush. And Cat in particular has some really good stuff, as she was able to defeat Raven, a character who can harm beings, who can create the cosmology and hold entire universes. That prior point is important because the Gravity Rush cosmology has multiple separate spacetimes, making it a low multiversal construct at worst. Raven also has infinite speed, as she could react and move at a relative pace to an entire spacetime collapsing in and on itself. And once again, Cat can fight on par with this being, meaning that she should have comparable stats. But even at a lower end, she's capable of creating black holes so potent that they can manipulate space and time. So yeah, well, she's probably the strongest being we've talked about so far. And I'd reckon she's capable of even defeating Goku as seen at the end of Dragon Ball Z, as he only really caps that universal with possible low multiversal implications if you kinda squint at Buhan's scream. But unfortunately, a current Goku should be far above her, as he also has low multiversal AP, being able to threaten the Dragon Ball Z macrocosm, which is composed of multiple infinite sized spacetimes. And while I do think Gravity Rush may have more of these spaces in its cosmology, Goku has stacked his low multiversal god power into his base, and he has many forms that can drastically increase his stats, including power. Super Saiyan 3 alone is a 400 times multiplier to base, so while Cat puts up a good fight, Goku is kind of carried by his Dragon Ball super scaling here. Next. And just like that, we go back to fodder characters. This guy, Sweet Tooth, is unironically street level with his main physicals, stemming from the fact that he can casually game in and, destroy regular people. He's also just like pretty big, he's like a football player or something. But any of his decent skilling comes from the fact that his truck is shown to be able to destroy large monuments, such as the Eiffel Tower, the Statue of Liberty, and I'm just gonna skip this one. As for his speed now, it's just regular human level, but the vehicles are surprisingly fast in this verse, as they can dodge tank shells. But other than that, yeah, this guy's a Kid Goku victim. Next, Colonel Raditz is from a game called Killzone, and before I tell you whether or not he can beat Goku, I'm just gonna play footage from his series. Yeah, you tell me what you think. Next, here we have Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. He was on the thumbnail, so I'm going to talk about him. Or Past Me is going to talk about him because, I don't want to repeat myself, as I went over his scaling in context to whether or not he beat Goku in a Smash Brothers video. So, as I see it, this video is going to be long already, so I might as well save some time, instead of repeating myself. Nice, we get the cover of one of my favorite games of all time. So yeah, we have 2 reps here, and they're both pretty high tiers in the verse. So let's get into that. At worst, these guys would upscale characters whose summons can create and sustain spaces and even large nebula. And with that, we also have statements that these summons aren't illusions and that the individuals create their own unique spaces. So yeah, these are real separate dimensions that these guys can just casually create, which Cloud and Sephiroth would just upscale. There's also another summon in the game known as the Knight of Rounds, which creates a large galaxy cluster. So that's some nice multi-galactic AP for these guys. This is consistent as Sephiroth himself during the final boss battle infamously recreates the entire universe for one of his summons just to destroy it, which Cloud himself can endure. Some people think that Sephiroth simply summoned a meteor here, but it's stated verbatim in another source that he created this dimension and then just destroyed it, which sent them back to where they were to begin with, granting Sephiroth casual universal attack bonuses. But at best, he'd scale above the life stream, or at least relative to it. This is notable as this construct can create universes, and it's stated to just transcend time, making it a low complex multiversal structure. Sephiroth has overpowered this source, meaning that he would scale to similar levels. Oh, and Cloud would as well. Kind of just forget about him. And as for speed, he's gotten casual MFTL plus scaling due to the previously mentioned meteor stuff, but he likely capped at immeasurable due to his scaling to the life stream. And yeah, this guy beats Goku. Bro's just a monster. Oh, and I guess Cloud scales to him too, so Cloud also beats Goku. That's pretty neat. And wow, just like that, we have our first character who can actually beat Goku. And it comes to us via stock footage from a character who's not even in PlayStation All-Stars. Yikes, this is gonna be a long one, is it? But seriously, PlayStation, you guys had Spyro, Crash, Cloud as some of your most famous IPs. Why aren't they in this game? And you went with someone like Fat Princess? Man, this game deserves a sequel bad, with a much better roster. And if Sony were ever to do that, they should add PS4 Spider-Man. Nice transition, I know, but let's just get his scaling out the way. Spider-Man is consistently anywhere between large building to town level, as he can fight on par and defeat characters who can casually destroy multiple C blocks and even huge structures, with his higher M stemming from the fact that he could contribute to the ultimate defeat of Sandman, a character who is so massive that his storms can make up a huge chunk of cities, with his most simple movements being calculated to be in the kilotons. You can try to get Spider-Man much higher if you dive into the true scope of Sandman's storms, as he created them. He's described to be an elemental force capable of shaking New York to its very foundation. And as for his speed, he's consistently at worst around massively hypersonic, as he's once again another lightning timer. Not gonna lie, he has the same basic stats as DMC Reboot with Dante, and I just slandered him. If anything, I guess having a good game buys you some respect from me, despite him being once again another lamb to the slaughter, as it's Goku after all. Next. You guys best believe Nathan Drake doesn't believe Goku, but this guy is unironically one of my favorite gaming characters ever. So I'm gonna seize probably my one moment to scale him on the channel, so let's go. Cue the music. Nathan Drake can survive some crazy stuff. It's kind of his whole thing. He's fought everything from Yetis, demons, and zombies, and he can physically go toe to toe with amped superhumans. He's survived RPG blasts near him point blank multiple times, both in, cutscenes as well as in regular gameplay. Not only can he survive encounters with rockets, he's physically on par with them in terms of overall speed, being able to outrun them and outmaneuver these weapons consistently. With this in mind, overall he would have some small building level AP and durability, and he would have speed ranging anywhere between subsonic to supersonic. For some minor stuff now, he's canonically has luck. Like, I know it's a meme that he's super lucky, but it's canon, as according to the gameplay designers, Nathan Drake doesn't get shot once in any of his games canonically, right? And that gray screen is just a representation of his luck running out. So this man literally runs in the middle of like active war zones all the time, and he just canonically isn't even hit with a bullet once. As the gameplay designers put it, all the bullets are forced to miss him until they don't. So I mean, it's pretty neat. He's also a master at sword fighting. He can shoot pretty much any gun there is and take out legions of mercenaries with them. You know what? If you haven't played Uncharted, play it. Tired of all you new gens hyping up The Last of Us. Don't get me wrong, that first game is a masterpiece, but Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, that's a masterpiece. So with all that said and done, I can confidently say Nathan Drake beats Goku. No diff. Better writing equals higher AP. Got a problem with it? Debate me. Can Goku do this? Or this? Or this? Didn't think so. Next. Rounding out our Naughty Dog representation for this video, and we have Jak and Daxter. These platforming icons are pretty much Ratchet and Clank before Ratchet and Clank, especially in terms of like a platformer science fiction duo. So yeah, let's get into the scaling. At first glance, they don't seem to have anything too notable, as that's to be expected because the game series is a third-person shooter platformer, so they have usually nothing. But at best, if you kind of squint, they have the same kind of scaling that classic Sonic does, as they can fight on par with and destroy mechs powered by the precursor stone, an object powerful enough to destroy the entire world. I'll play the scene, but the characters seem to imply that it would be like to a planetary yield.
Stone, according to my calculations, a runaway ego surge and cracking build would theoretically destroy everything.
Everything?
All things. Every single thing.
For some minor consistency now, the character who was wielding this planetary stone verbatim calls Jax the supreme weapon while having the stone on deck. I'm not sure if that would upscale him off the stone by itself, but I think it should at least establish that he's able to take on threats relative to this magnitude. And as for speed, Jak can dodge lasers at close proximity to himself, and he has power-ups such as the blue echo, which doubles his speed, so roughly he'd cap in the FTL ranges. So yeah, he's pretty cracked compared to the average Naughty Dog character, but Goku as well, Goku-versal. Next we have the spiritual successor to our last duo, being Ratchet and Clank themselves. I can dive into the full semantics of their scaling because honestly it's a lot, but it kind of seems like counterproductive as it would just come down to this very simple concept. As yeah, they can beat Goku, but I don't think they would, for the main reason being speed. As Ratchet and Clank aren't nearly as physically strong or durable as, some of their weapons, especially one known as the Dimensionator, which can harness power that when destroyed can rip fabrics of reality to a multiversal scale as seen during the events of Rift Apart. But in another game we get the true scale of this weapon, as when you hear things like rip holes in reality used from like Universal, but nah, apparently it rips holes in the entire infinite multiverse. So yeah, I think that if this weapon was shot at a current Goku and he didn't dodge it, it would obliterate him. But unfortunately, these guys are too slow to even tag them. Don't get me wrong, these guys have adventures that span entire universes, which typically involve them manually having to drive spaceships across different galaxies in short manners of time. But Goku is just once again built different, as this guy can produce shockwaves that can cross over into separate space times. And even in Super verbatim, we have characters who are faster than instantaneous movement. So unless Goku tried the beam clash's weapon, nothing is stopping him from just blitzing and one-shotting this duo before they could even think of utilizing this weapon. So next, Bioshock is one of my favorite game series ever, so I'm kind of stoked that the big guy made his way into this game. But unfortunately, their scaling still caps around the small building to building level ranges, as they're portrayed to be just walking tanks, and they have stuff like drilling through concrete and rocks. They can stomp and shatter like glass. They don't really get super hurt by most conventional weapons, but in the form of some quantifiable stuff, they're able to fight with Subject Delta, who in himself scales to the big sisters, who can rip apart steel doors like it's nothing, which will get them, nearly building level AP. And as for speed, they're roughly capped in like the peak human tier. So with these stats, he's like a Red Ribbon Kid Goku arc victim. Next, here we have Aloy, the main protagonist of Horizon Zero Dawn, which is one of PlayStation's newest IPs. And unfortunately, because of that, it's relatively grounded, with our protagonist only having feats that would get her building level AP, as she can beat mechs whose feats cap around there. And as for speed, it's at least better than our last guys, as she can consistently dodge gunfire and even see bullets and arrows of the like in slow motion if she focuses hard enough, which means she would get pinky flanked and statued by any Goku post like the Budokai Tenkaichi. Next, Jin Sakai is unironically wall level. Next, here we have Heihachi from Tekken, which fortunately for myself is another verse that I covered during my Smash Bros video. So I'm gonna take a break from saying Goku blitzes in one shot and just let past me say it. I want to say that the character that I cover isn't exactly Heihachi, but it's a character that he would scale to, so it would just be the same metas either way. So I'm just gonna hand the mic to my past self. See ya. Here we have none other than Kazuma Mishima. This guy overall would get anywhere from island to multi-continental at best, as he would scale above Jak 6's, which can halt meteors that are 6 miles long in diameter, which would be a feat equivalent to 6.8 gigatons. And at best, he can fight on par with Devil Jin, while in this form, Jin was a character who could scorch the entire Earth's surface, which due to the manner in which this feat was performed would be a feat in the multi-continental ranges, which a true form Kazuma would scale to. As for speed, every Devil Jin user is capable of firing a laser laser, which is pretty self-explanatory. There's also characters who can react to said beam, granting the verse pretty much relativistic plus reaction times. Overall, with this level of AP, geez, I thought we were done with the King Vegeta handsway stuff. Well, okay, I know I'm supposed to talk about Emmett Grimes, but this guy is apparently so irrelevant that he has no versus wiki or character stats. Like, when you put his name into Google, the only thing that comes up is his appearance in this game. So, you know, it's not impossible for me to not use versus wiki, character stats, or any sort of outside help. You know, I've looked into things myself personally, but for a character who probably just gets one-shot by Goku anyways, I'm not gonna put myself through that trouble. But I'm gonna make it up to you guys by covering the GOATs of PlayStation, being Spyro and Crash Bandicoot. So starting off with the de facto face of PlayStation back in the day, I'm just gonna say that Crash unironically scales pretty high, like surprisingly so. At a low end, he can defeat the evil twins while in their mech. On top of that, this is notable as these guys state themselves that they're masters of the infinite dimensions that make up the cosmology, with powers over reality itself. You know, dimensions probably in this context being, you know, other universes, but still crazy high. And if that's not enough for you, he was able to defeat Entrance, who's a fifth dimensional being, meaning that he transcends space and time. Meaning that at worst, he would be multiversal plus, but due to the Entrance stuff, he'd more than likely be around low complex multiversal. Meaning Goku better not try to catch his fade. Spyro, on the other hand, at a low end is anywhere between large planetary to dwarf star level, as he defeated Malfor, a being who can pull celestial bodies to that yield, but at a mid end, he has some casual solar system level scaling, as he could defeat the sorcerer who could send everyone in the game to another dimension, which if we want to use quantifiable metrics and not dive into the true semantics of a feat like that, would yield solar system levels of AP. Spyro himself also has some statements about his power that you could scale him that high, but at best, he has a lot of high universal scaling, as many of his ops are stated to have infinite or like unbounded power. And I mean, Cell from the Z anime has pretty much the same scaling but only better, and this is how filler characters did him. So next, here we have Cole McGrath from Infamous, and at best he would scale to the Beast, though notably he's not as strong as him, but they can fight on par, which is important because the Beast can destroy entire cities, huge chunks of countries, and even is shown to be able to destroy the moon in a bad alternate future scenario. A better way to scale Cole to the Beast is the fact that he could defeat Kessler, who in himself is implied to be able to beat the Beast, which is really important because once again, going to his scaling, I forgot to mention that this guy can generate entire black holes that are relative to the size of his hands, which would require dwarf star levels of power. And as for his speed, he's able to react to lightning and dodge it. He can also dodge radiation, which would put his speed anywhere between massively hypersonic and, you know, relativistic plus. So in conclusion, this guy's about a Saiyan Saga level threat. You know, he'd be doing some pretty good numbers if you put him in that era of Dragon Ball, but, you know, that was 30 years ago. So next, here we have Sackboy, who is surprisingly tougher than he looks, as he's able to casually shrug off planet-destroying attacks multiple times, which due to the violentness of each explosion that I've seen, just, you know, gauging out the eye would get anywhere between large planetary to dwarf star. So yeah, I mean, he could be Homelander and probably Omni-Man, but yo, Omni-Man is never gonna stop catching strays on this channel, is he? Next, here we have the big boy himself, the de facto face of modern PlayStation, Kratos. Oh, and Zeus too, because he's also in the game, but we're gonna only be talking about Kratos because, you know, Zeus just downscales. The Ghost of Sparta scaling is super duper easy, as he is the strongest in the Greek saga and he's a top tier in the Norse saga. So there's a lot of feats that he will just upscale. Starting off with the feats from his earlier escapades, he scales to Zeus, who is the strongest of the Olympian gods. The Olympians are stronger than the Titans, who are stronger than the Primordials. The Primordials, as a mere side effect of their battle, were able to create the entire Greek cosmology, which I want to reiterate that is not a country. You know, some people think that each pantheon is a different country. No, it's a different space-time, and Kratos just kind of somehow travels to them. But yeah, the Greek cosmology has multiple infinite space-times that are in it. The mortal realm and the underworld are stated to be infinite multiple times, and there's also a whole bunch of other dimensions that, you know, reside in this cosmology. Overall, making it very similar to the macrocosm from Dragon Ball Super. So when this game came out, and this is where Kratos' scaling capped, he would not be strong enough to beat Goku, kind of for the same reasons that the character from Gravity Rush couldn't. Both are low multiversal, but Goku's just way deeper into it. But it's because of the new recent Norse games that Kratos has a far better chance. As in this recent run, we know that he scales to Odin, who in himself could one-shot Thor. a character who just by hitting a snake really hard could not only fling the snake back in time, but also stagger and injure the Yggdrasil / world trait, which is stated to transcend time and space, making it a 5th dimensional construct. With in-game text stating verbatim that the shockwave splintered the tree. You know, here's a Google image of what a splintered tree looks like. Kratos also scales the Thor himself, so yeah, that's another way to scale him to the Yggdrasil / world trait. Using these metrics, Kratos would scale anywhere between low multiversal to low complex multiversal. He would also be low complex to an infinite degree due to the Yggdrasil being infinite. And his speed would just automatically be immeasurable as he scales the characters whose motions can send characters back in time. Zeus also gets a good buff from this because there are many narrative implications in the Norse saga that Zeus is a very powerful guy and really respected. You have Ymir, who was, the councilman of the Aesir, stating that Zeus being the father of Kratos is a good reason for why Kratos is so strong. And there's also the entire narrative that, Thor was trying to see this god killer, His reputation, preceded him, and it was all due to the fact that he beat Zeus. Odin also tried to make peace with Kratos due to the sole fact that he beat Zeus once again. So Zeus just gets carried by the narrative. So both of our God of War characters would beat Goku. And that about does it. I did every character from PlayStation AllStars and then some. And most of them didn't beat Goku, but the ones who did, you gotta respect them, I never thought that Crash Bandicoot would be in the same conversation as Kratos in anything, but hey. We like to scale things that no one does on the Goji-Chronic channel. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was super duper long. Once again, I want to thank you guys for your patience, and I want to apologize for the fact that this video didn't come out on Friday. So I hope that I lived up to your expectations and then some. But remember, I'll see you guys tomorrow with another video. But until then, stay big G fans.